Hey people, let's talk Trek again, and normally I stand here and I'm very excited, very thrilled to talk about the episode that just happened. Last week, a bit of an outlier on that one in that I didn't really like that episode at all. There was very little redeeming about it, so I whined for most of the review. And, I get a lot of people don't like that, and I get a lot of you have come to these reviews and have praised me for being so even-handed and balanced and, seeing the good and the bad and treating it fairly and, going down the middle of the road and seeing both sides of the story and all the, whatever kind of metaphor or cliche you like. But I'm afraid this time I'm going to disappoint you on that score again, because I'm afraid this is the second episode in a row where I didn't enjoy the episode. Except this time it was for very different reasons. So although, unlike last week where it was just kind of a shit episode, this week it might very well be a good episode to some of you. But to me, there was a near zero chance I was going to enjoy it as soon as I saw what kind of episode it was going to be. Why? Well, because for a start, it's a pretty uninspired and extremely by-the-numbers horror-themed episode, and I have a very low care factor for that genre of fiction as a whole. Secondly, and as always with episode reviews and breakdowns like this, spoiler alert. Secondly, they killed off a character. And I know a lot of others were waiting rather impatiently to have their moment in the sun, get a nice fat chunk of backstory, have an episode revolve around them, flesh them out a bit, give them something for fans to latch onto as them as a person, and truly make us care about them as a character beyond being merely intrigued by them and wanting to know more about their character. Hello again, I am Blunty, and there is exactly one horror movie I can name off the top of my head that I actually consistently enjoy every time I watch it, and that's the original Alien movie. Which is a movie that this episode rips off heavily. I'm sorry, not ripped off, pays homage to heavily. It also pays homage to Predator, which I suppose could be called a horror movie, but I'd more readily call it an action movie. But it is also another classic that I love very deeply, I've watched many, many, many times, and pretend very hard they never made any sequels to it, because if they did, the sequels would surely be terrible. In this episode of Strange New Worlds, the penultimate episode for the first season, episode 9 of an increasingly very short-feeling season, is called All Those Who Wander, which is a weird Tolkien reference, extremely loosely tied to the thematics, I suppose, if you squint and try real hard. That being, not all those who wander are lost. That's the full quote, which I imagine is a reference to Uhura and her ongoing plot thread about trying to find out what she wants from life, and even if she wants to be in Starfleet at all, which carries very little drama, as we already know what she's gonna do. And as a device, they don't really lean into it beyond the episodes where she has a little dialogue exchange or voiceover exposition about it, just explaining, I don't know what I'm going to do, derp. It's really quite dull, because we already know the outcome. And if you already know the outcome, then you must make the journey to get there interesting. And they kind of are failing hard to do that, because it wasn't and isn't interesting. They just keep repeating the same point about, I'm not sure whether I belong here in Starfleet, dead parents, and don't know what I want to do from life. And they never expand on it beyond that. That would be the interesting part. So what we got was a mostly cynically developed plot thread to try and make us care about Hema by making Uhura care about them. And we know Uhura because she was in the original series, so we know and care about her already, so we know and care about what happens to her and who she's friends with and stuff like that. So that's the thing that matters about Hema, is his relationship with her. But then they failed by not actually giving Hema enough screen time to let us know him well enough as a person, instead of as a plot device or exposition horn. It's not enough that Uhura likes him. So, the episode setup, which I would normally spend a fair amount of time going through, but this time, who cares? It's a thin setup. There's a crashed ship, frosty, inhospitable planet, missing or dead crew, flimsy excuse to cut off a small portion of the crew from support of the larger crew and resources of the Enterprise because of plot reasons they have to be elsewhere and can't talk to them. And there's a supposedly spooky threat crawling around, creeping everybody out. It was so uninteresting, I just can't even bring myself to break it apart any more than that, like I would actually do. It's by-the-numbers horror story crap. Now, personal bias, I don't like horror. I've said this. Horror to me is almost always feeling incredibly predictable and obviously manipulative and just kind of tedious. I really don't enjoy it. The trickery they use in horror to fake tension, the disjointed cinematography, the darkness and the shadowy environment, the jump scares, which it seems this time around the lights are the only thing Hema couldn't get booted up aboard the crashed ship. Everything else turned on except communications and the lights, because plot. And of course the lights don't work for no other reason than because horror movies work better when it's dark. They sort of lose a lot when the lights are on, because very few people are scared of lightly lit corners. All the tension is imagining what the characters are imagining are in the dark corners. So that's already a pretty dumb plot hole right there. The lights are the only thing you can't get working? All right. Then you get the wildly infuriating and irritating jump scares. There's suddenly a character or a cat or whatever pops out from nowhere to startle another character who've been watching sit in silence role just looking nervous. Oh no! Manufactured tension! And it is always accompanied by that sudden percussive or screechy audio cue that is motivated by nothing on screen and is utterly devoid of any diegetic source, meaning it's just there to startle you, the viewer. And the on-screen character wouldn't have heard it because it relates to nothing on screen anyway, so it just makes it transparently manipulative, and I really fucking hate that. It is lazy cinematography. Lazy, lazy, lazy. I find the horror genre largely insipid in this way. Uninspired, lazy, predictable, extremely predictable, devoid of anything compelling, or worst of all, boring, because it is so easy to predict in the first place. And I know, a lot of people love feeling the build-up and release of tension that horror provides, and it specializes in generating instead of actually, doing anything interesting or meaningful in a narrative. And if that's you, if you enjoy horror movies because of that, that's fine. I like having an actual narrative that makes sense and is useful and is actually saying something beyond. So, yeah, predictably enough, I was pretty checked out on this episode from nearly moment one when I realized it was a horror episode. I kept watching, mostly because pretty much I was hoping it'd be subverted or used for something narratively interesting to get some cool backstory on a character, or the gone, or maybe they'll hang some bait for future events. But nothing like that happens. It's another nothing episode that's meaningless. The extremely try-hard horror cinematography and disjointed nature of it made it hard to watch for me. The dull, extremely derivative premise and heavy theft inspiration from movies like Alien and Predator made it only more tedious, because if you're going to steal, at least do it well. But they didn't. It feels like a student film half the time. Student film with a decent budget, nice cameras, but a student film, just aping more successful films as a learning tool. And most of all, it was lazy writing. You'd figure with them leaning so heavily on tropes and borrowed material that at some point they'd subvert it. Clever writing, but no, no neat turn or twist. Everything plops out exactly as a first draft of a student-made horror film would lay out on scraps of paper, scribbled down on napkins at a diner or something cliche. You come to the edge of the resolution and you get a character explaining the trap they intend to use on these extremely smart monsters, and then the trap works perfectly, precisely as explained. Wow, that's some thrilling storytelling right there. Everything went as we were told it was going to go. What a compelling narrative. Explain the plan, execute the plan goes perfectly to plan without a single hitch or need for the characters to adapt or overcome or even fail. Or anything interesting. And then the absolute worst sin of the episode happens. Hammer's death. His noble sacrifice is supposed to be meaningful, but it's supposed to be a gut punch to the audience. Oh no, Hammer! They killed Hammer! But even to me, someone who was very hungry and invested in having more Hammer on screen to find out more about him, it fell so fucking flat. Firstly, given how his narrative line with Uhura revolves, it seems like they planned this all along. Unlike, say, Tasha Yar, who was killed off unceremoniously, written off, in fact, because the actor wasn't really feeling the jam and made a somewhat premature decision that I think they regret these days, leaving the show to go do something more interesting than Star Trek. Oops. But with Hammer, as far as we know, this is not that. I feel like he was enjoying being that character, even though he didn't get a lot of screen time. And it's not even like Allium on Discovery. Arium? Is that her name? Probably. Who cares? I couldn't be bothered looking it up. She was a nothing character forever on that show in Discovery, with the occasional single line of exposition as bridge crew or snappy comeback. She had no real development, no characterization. The only thing interesting was, hey, is she a robot? Android? Is she a cyborg? Is she or was she human? Gee whiz, I bet they unfold that as the show goes on. Otherwise, why spend so much time and effort on an obviously complicated and time-consuming makeup job and character design and prosthetics and all that sort of stuff? Sure would be shitty to just waste all that effort by doing nothing with the character forever. And then, nope. With paper-thin development never being expanded on, we get one episode where we were suddenly flooded with tragic backstory, but only in an effort to manipulate us because they were going to kill her off, and they wanted that to be an emotionally meaningful event for the other characters on the show, so they had to try and make the audience care about her as a person as well, otherwise it would mean nothing. That's not character development, that's plot happening. It did not work, much like a lot of the lazy and childish basic bitch writing on Discovery and their constant clumsy attempts at emotional manipulation of their audience just didn't work on that show. With Hema's death, we don't even get that much of respect. It's an ensemble episode, so he gets a fraction of the screen time before being offed in the first place, and in that time he does get on screen. Do we get anything meaningful? Do we learn one new thing about him? No, we get the same old one-note Hema that we've had so far in the tiny fraction of scenes he's been in. We get the one tiny slice of his personal philosophy just repeated to us, that of the non-violence thing and the kind of faux pacifism, and a repeated echo in his sense of mentorship with Uhura, which is nothing new is added to that. They just repeat the exact same notes we had earlier in the season. Notes, by the way, we already had repeated to us in this episode, in the opening of the episode, in the previously on Strange New Worlds thing, so they repeated it twice in the same episode without adding anything new to it. We get one reference to the fact that he and Spock have a pre-established long-term interpersonal relationship. And this is the second time that we ever get this acknowledged on screen. It is never actually expanded on. We still have no idea the nature of it, how it started, what their interactions were, how they feel about each other beyond being congenial, and a sense of them knowing each other fairly well. And then we get a lovely justification of suicide because, well, it seems more convenient than risking any trust in known terrible person and half-assed doctor, Dr. Mbenga, to actually fix the medical issue at hand. Yeah, I'd probably do the same thing. It is a situation which, by the way, once more would have been fixed instantly if anyone would acknowledge that suspended animation is an easily possible technology with existing technology that existed for about 100 years as the show stands, or in fact, they could have preserved him in exactly the same way as the doctor halted the progression of the illness in his kid. Keep Hema in the transporter buffer until they can figure out how to save him from the reptile eggs in his belly. Surely there's one transporter on that ship, right? Power's back on, everything is working except the lights and communications because, well, the plot needs those not to work. Do they explore any other possible solution? Nope. Suicide it is, and we're supposed to be fulfilled by it because he dies with a smile on his face because the planet he's on reminds him a bit of the ice fields of his native planet. So he gives Uhura a wave and repeats some advice he's given her before, twice, but this time she listened to the advice, so it's meaningful. Wow, what a great and meaningful send-off for a character that they did nothing interesting with. I sure don't see right through the hackneyed writing and childish attempt at emotional manipulation at all, no. But to be fair, it probably was a better death to fling yourself off a precipice onto an alien planet and smash open your brains on rock-hard glaciers below with a gut full of lizard eggs slowly dissolving your organs than it would have been to let known terrible person and half-assed doctor Beardface Mbenga fail to be a good doctor and a good person again, like he so consistently does already. I wouldn't trust that doctor either, frankly. Hammer. Then we get Uhura leaving, which was always going to happen because she's still a cadet and she has to go back to the academy. And also it's Uhura, so we know she doesn't stick around. And then without any build-up at all, Anne buggers off to go find some kids' parents or something that she has to do alone for some reason and she also has to quit her job to do it because she thinks they might be outside the Federation space, and that's impossible to do while you're still working for the Federation. So she has to take the kid and stumble around trying to find their parents, and she has to do this instead of someone qualified for the job because they might be outside Federation space, and she has a personal connection with the kid because they both got captured by the Gorn and were freaked out by it, and there's no one else more qualified to deal with a traumatized child than someone who's already been traumatized instead of someone who's been trained to deal with trauma. She is instead still dealing with her own trauma because earlier in the episode we see her coming back from a therapy session. So she is in no way qualified to help this kid. And Pike just goes, yeah, whatever. I'll smooth it over. No problem. This seems like a good plan. It's probably the best thing for the kid to have you, an emotionally distant, obviously still extremely traumatized security officer wandering around the galaxy desperately trying to find her parents. Yeah, that feels like the best thing for both of you. Good plot. Frankly, I just don't care that she's gone. Lan was potentially interesting, but the writers just couldn't find a rhythm for her, and she never really gelled with any character pairing they tried her with. There was never really any on-screen chemistry with anybody, and I don't mean that as a slight against the actor. She seems to be a very good actor indeed, but the writers have failed her, I think. So it seems like they're giving up on her, writing her off the show, maybe bring her back later with a new narrative, because she'll be changed by her experiences on the adventure with the kid, so she can come back and be a fresher character that is potentially more interesting than the one-note character she has been so far. Oh, and there was a thing about Spock letting rage loose because of some dumb fuckery plot reason, and now he can't control his emotions anymore, despite a literal lifetime of learning and being trained exactly how to do that, precisely because that's the whole thing Vulcans do. He spent his entire life learning how to control his emotions, but now he got angry. He let himself get angry once, and now he can't control it anymore because it is yet another extremely contrived moment and desperate attempt at emotional manipulation of the audience. It is still a nice moment between him and Chapel on screen, because those two do have a wonderful chemistry on screen together. And maybe they'll use this to lead up to him going through the Colonnar, because again, we know where he'll be and who he will be in less than 10 years. So it's not so much of an, oh no, what will happen to Spock if he can't control his emotions, as it is about his journey to get to that place where we know him in the original series and beyond. And that's potentially interesting, but their setup for it, especially in this episode, was not interesting or even very well done. So with this episode failing and falling flat for me, now 30% of this 10-episode season is made up of episodes I'll never bother to rewatch because there's no value in rewatching it for me. And that sucks. It feels crap. On the other hand, 70% of season 1, assuming that the final just nails it and doesn't shit the bed, yeah, 70% is still pretty good, so maybe I should do the math on for season 1 of TNG, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise, see how those filter out. Might be interesting. I can tell you now I'll find 0% of Disco season 1 worth rewatching, because I've already done that already before season 2 started, and yeah, I really did not enjoy that experience at all. It was more painful the second time somehow. Anyway, I wish I had more insight or more metaphor to pull apart, or more similes to play along, more allegories to point out, to pull from this episode. But twice in a row now, it's been an episode that I just don't care about at all, which sadly makes this review not only largely negative, which I really hate doing, but it's probably quite dull to watch, because most of it has been me explaining why I don't like horror. Better luck next time, I guess. Next week, fingers crossed, final episode of the season. Hopefully they do something big and interesting. It seems like these last 2 episodes were saving the budget for that, because these last 2 episodes have happened on simple, really basic redressings of their standing sets of the Enterprise. In the last episode, all they did was hang some vines and put up some candles around the place, and in this episode, all they did was turn off the lights and tilt the cameras to make it look like a spooky thing, because they had a contrived setup. Oh, the ship that's crashed, oh, it's made from the same parts as our ship, so it's probably going to look pretty similar. It seems like they were saving money. Like really, really hard, trying to save money on production. Hopefully we see that reflected in the final episode of the season, where they spend all the money they saved on these last 2 lousy episodes, and we get a really, really good episode to finish off season 1. Thank you for watching. Sorry, this has not lived up to the standards of the other, or most of the other reviews I've done of this show. I feel kind of crappy about that, quite frankly. Because I've enjoyed the way a lot of you have come to these episodes and thanked me for my various insights, or making them think about things in a fresh way, or giving them a different perspective they didn't pick up on the first time. I love doing that and triggering these discussions and going back and forth and hearing about what you thought about what I thought and things. And I don't think I've given you anything to bounce off with this one. And I'm sorry for that. I really am. Live long and prosper nonetheless. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there. And bring on the final episode of the season. Hopefully they do something with it that's interesting.